The grand, echoing halls of the Blackwood estate had many secrets, but none so poignant as the young black man who swept its marble floors. Known only as Elijah, he was gaunt, his clothes worn thin, a spectral presence amidst opulent splendor. He was the orphan, the cleaner, a ghost in the gilded machine run by Alistair Blackwood, a millionaire whose arrogance was as vast as his fortune. Upstairs, in a room bathed in perpetual, sterile sunlight, lay Clara Blackwood, the tycoon's daughter, locked in the silent prison of a coma for 3 agonizing years. Legions of high-priced specialists had paraded through, their pronouncements grand, their results nil, their fees exorbitant. Elijah, often tasked with cleaning Clara's chamber under the dismissive gaze of Nurse Ratchdwell, had seen what they missed, the subtle flutter of an eyelid, the almost imperceptible clench of a distant finger. One raw, windswept afternoon, a quiet certainty compelling him, Elijah approached Mr. Blackwood in the cavernous library. "Sir," he began, his voice a mere whisper against the crackling fireplace, I believe I might be able to help Miss Clara Blackwood, a titan of industry absorbed in charts that promised yet more millions, slowly lowered his newspaper. His eyes, cold as chips of ice, raked Elijah from head to threadbare toe. A sneer, ugly and sharp, twisted his lips. "You," he barked, his voice a whip-crack. "You, the floor sweeper, presume to succeed where the world's finest medical minds have failed? What miracles do you propose, boy? Incantations? Voodoo? Perhaps a tribal dance?" The laughter that followed was like shattering glass, cruel and dismissive. Elijah stood his ground, his gaze direct, though his heart hammered. "No, sir. It is not magic. I have merely observed. I feel. I know something." Blackwood slammed a jeweled fist onto the ancient oak desk. "Feelings. Knowledge. You know your place, boy, and it is with a dustpan, not delusions of grandeur. Get out of my sight before I have you thrown onto the streets, where such insolent vermin belong." Elijah bowed his head, the familiar sting of injustice a bitter taste. He had offered a fragile hope, and in return, received only venom. He retreated, Blackwood's derisive cackles chasing him down the corridor, a prelude to a far greater, more public humiliation yet to unfold. The following morning, a malignant, calculating gleam ignited in Alistair Blackwood's eyes. An idea, both theatrical and sadistic, had taken root. He wouldn't just fire the orphan, he would crucify him socially, make an example of his audacity. He summoned his obsequious chief of staff, Mr. Grantham. "Grantham," Blackwood commanded, a wolfish grin stretching his features, "alert the media. Invite the members of the hospital board, our most distinguished associates. Tell them there will be a demonstration. A rather unique attempt to awaken my daughter. And find that cleaning boy. Inform him his grand opportunity has arrived." Grantham, a man whose spine had long since been surgically removed and replaced with jello, scurried away to execute the cruel directive. Within hours, the estate's grand ballroom, typically reserved for glittering soirees, buzzed with anticipation. Reporters jostled for position, their cameras poised. A gallery of Blackwood's elite, smirking colleagues whispered behind manicured hands, their eyes glinting with malicious amusement. Dr. Sterling, a physician whose diagnoses conveniently aligned with Blackwood's desires, stood beside an ornate, velvet-draped bed where Clara lay, a porcelain doll in a tableau of impending mockery. Blackwood ascended a small dais, his voice resonating with false sincerity. "Friends, esteemed colleagues, members of the press. Today, we explore a most unconventional path. It appears a hidden genius has toiled in our midst. Our very own janitor, forgive me, what is your name again, boy?" He gestured condescendingly towards Elijah, who stood isolated, his shabby attire a stark island in a sea of silks and Savile Row suits. "Elijah, sir," he stated, his voice quiet but carrying an unexpected firmness that momentarily hushed the titters. "Ah, yes, Elijah," Blackwood boomed, his tone laden with sarcasm thick enough to spread on toast. "Young Elijah here, in his infinite wisdom, believes he holds the key to rousing my dear Clara, a feat that has, alas, eluded the titans of medicine. A truly audacious assertion, is it not?" A wave of derisive chuckles rippled through the assembled vultures. Therefore, in the spirit of open-mindedness, Blackwood continued, his smile never reaching his eyes, I have granted him this stage. Perform your miracle, Elijah. Awaken my daughter. The world eagerly awaits your triumph. He swept his arm wide, a corrupt Roman emperor condemning a gladiator to the lions. Blackwood was utterly certain of Elijah's impending, catastrophic failure, his anticipation of the boy's public disgrace a palpable, almost joyous force in the room. Elijah moved towards Clara, a solitary figure walking into the glare of 100 judgmental eyes. The atmosphere in the ballroom was heavy, thick with derision and the morbid curiosity of a crowd anticipating a train wreck. He ignored the snide whispers, the contemptuous gaze of Dr. Sterling, the predatory lenses of the cameras. He knelt beside Clara's bed, his worn face softening with an expression of profound tenderness as he looked upon her still form. He produced no mystical artifacts, uttered no arcane chants. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his frayed trousers and retrieved a small, intricately beaded bracelet, its colors vibrant, its craftsmanship exquisite. He gently took Clara's limp hand and slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. Then, he began to speak, his voice no longer a hesitant murmur but a rich, sonorous river of sound, imbued with a sorrow and a strength that seemed to suck the air from the room. Clara, he began, his words painting vivid images of sun-drenched African plains and starlit desert nights, do you remember the tales your grandmother told you? The ones about the brave warrior queen, Amina, and the clever talking tortoise. Stories whispered to you in Yoruba, her voice like warm honey. Blackwood froze, his face paling. No one, absolutely no one, ever spoke of Clara's maternal grandmother, a Nigerian princess whose legacy he had systematically tried to erase after her daughter, Clara's mother, had died under circumstances he preferred remained buried. Elijah continued, his voice resonating with an ancient rhythm, your mother, Adama, wove this bracelet for you, Clara, thread by precious thread, the day you took your first step. She called you Iona, her beautiful flower. She sang you songs of your ancestors, melodies of resilience, of light conquering even the deepest shadow. He began to hum then, a lullaby both haunting and powerful, a melody that seemed to thrum with the very heartbeat of the earth, a song of unwavering love, of a bond that death itself could not sever. The air in the ballroom crackled with an unseen energy. Dr. Sterling scoffed, preparing to intervene, but Blackwood, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, silenced him with a sharp gesture. Suddenly, a collective gasp swept the room. Clara's fingers, which had lain inert for 3 years, twitched. They curled, almost imperceptibly, around the beaded bracelet. A soft sigh, like the first breath of spring, escaped her lips. Her eyelids fluttered, then slowly, miraculously, opened. Her gaze, initially unfocused, cleared. It bypassed her astonished father, bypassed the stunned physicians, and settled, with an almost shocking intensity, on Elijah. Then, the true cataclysm. Clara struggled to sit up, her voice raspy but imbued with a terrifying clarity. He silenced her, she choked out, her eyes, now burning with an incandescent fury, fixing on Alistair Blackwood. He told everyone Mama ran away. He lied. He always lied. The ballroom erupted. Reporters surged, their microphones thrust forward like weapons, flashbulbs exploding in a blinding barrage. Alistair Blackwood, whose face had been a canvas of smug anticipation, was now a grotesque mask of disbelief and dawning terror. Clara! My darling girl, you're disoriented. The stress? He babbled, his hand reaching out, trembling. Clara flinched as if struck. No, Papa. I remember. I remember everything now. Her voice, though fragile, sliced through the pandemonium with the edge of cold steel. Mama didn't abandon us. You drove her to it. You threatened her. You told me she was unstable, a danger to herself and to me. But the danger was always you. Elijah rose, his quiet presence suddenly imbued with an immense, unshakable authority. Mr. Blackwood, he declared, his voice cutting through the clamor like a judgment bell, for 3 years, I have swept your floors. For 3 years, I have listened to your boasts and your cruelty. You saw me as less than human, invisible. But I am Elijah Okoro, son of Chidinma Okoro, your late wife Adama's dearest childhood friend and cousin. My mother was her confidant, her sister in all but blood. A fresh wave of shocked murmurs rolled through the crowd. Blackwood's jaw dropped, his complexion turning a sickly grey. When Adama, Clara's mother, was driven to the brink of despair by your relentless emotional battery and your systematic theft of her family's Nigerian holdings, she entrusted my mother with her diaries, her letters, incontrovertible proof of your psychological warfare, your fraudulent dealings that bled her dry even as you paraded as a self-made man. Elijah reached into the depths of his worn coat and produced a worn, leather-bound diary and a thick sheaf of official-looking documents. These papers, Mr. Blackwood, chronicle every vicious threat, every gaslighting campaign, every forged signature you used to isolate Adama and usurp her considerable inheritance. She died not of a sudden illness, as you claimed, but of a spirit systematically crushed. And Clara's coma? It wasn't a medical anomaly. It was the crushing weight of your tyranny, your constant dismissal of her art, her spirit, anything that echoed the vibrant woman you sought to annihilate. He turned to the stunned assembly. Clara didn't simply fall ill. She retreated from a world made toxic by this man's greed. The doctors, bedazzled by his wealth, saw only symptoms. They never sought the wounds inflicted on her soul. I knew her mother's language, her songs, the deep, abiding love this man attempted to extinguish. That is what brought her back. Truth. And the unyielding power of memory. Close-ups of diary entries in a graceful, feminine hand, letters bearing Blackwood's arrogant signature, and faded photographs of a radiant Adama with a laughing, young Clara filled the screens of the journalists' devices, irrefutable evidence of a dark, long-hidden narrative of profound cruelty. The magnificent edifice of Alistair Blackwood's existence, so meticulously constructed upon foundations of lies and ruthless ambition, disintegrated with the breathtaking speed of a dynamited skyscraper. The global media, scenting the carrion of a colossal scandal, broadcast the electrifying revelations across every conceivable platform. Tycoon's daughter awakens, accuses father of heinous cruelty, blared the headlines. Orphan janitor unmasks millionaire's dark dynasty. Blackwood stood transfixed, his face a ghastly shade of white, the supercilious smirk long vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed mask of pure, unadulterated horror. His meticulously curated universe was imploding in real time, on the very stage he had set for another's public disgrace. Dr. Sterling and his coterie of medical yes-men, moments before preening in Blackwood's reflected glory, now recoiled as if from a leper, their faces ashen with the sudden, chilling realization of their own complicity, or at the very least, their criminal negligence. The elite colleagues, whose sycophantic laughter had echoed so readily, now stared at Blackwood with a mixture of revulsion and dawning contempt, their minds already racing, calculating the quickest route to disassociation. Before the sun had set, police cruisers, sirens wailing, were converging on the Blackwood estate, not as invited guests, but as agents of long-delayed justice. Warrants were issued. Formal investigations were launched into decades of suspected financial fraud, racketeering, undue influence, and possible manslaughter in connection with Adama Okoro's conveniently timed demise. Blackwood stock market valuations plummeted like a stone. Business partners, once clamoring for his favor, now scrambled to sever all ties, issuing public statements of condemnation. His name, once a synonym for power and success, became an epithet for monstrous duplicity. His vast assets were frozen, his reputation not merely tarnished, but utterly annihilated. The grand ballroom, intended as the theater of Elijah's humiliation, became the scene of Alistair Blackwood's spectacular, public self-immolation. He was escorted away in handcuffs, a deflated, whimpering caricature of his former self, the incessant flashbulbs of the paparazzi like merciless, punishing blows. His downfall was absolute, a direct and karmic consequence of the hubris that led him to orchestrate the very event that exposed his rotten core to the unforgiving judgment of the world. The scorn he had intended for Elijah now rained down upon him, a torrent of righteous fury. Elijah Okoro, it was soon revealed, was far more than a simple janitor. After the mysterious death of Clara's mother, Adama, and the subsequent, equally suspicious accidents that claimed his own parents who had begun to ask difficult questions, Elijah had been left orphaned and dispossessed, armed only with Adama's journals and an unquenchable thirst for justice. He had taken the demeaning position at the Blackwood estate, a strategic move, allowing him to observe, to gather further evidence, and to watch over Clara, the last innocent link to a family shattered by greed. He was a gifted scholar of traditional Yoruba healing practices, a legacy passed down from his grandmother, possessing a profound understanding of the intricate dance between mind, spirit, and body, ancient wisdom that Blackwood, in his Western-centric arrogance, had dismissed as primitive superstition. With Blackwood's empire in ruins, a substantial portion of the recovered assets, rightfully part of Adama's stolen inheritance, was placed in trust for Clara. Under Elijah's compassionate stewardship and with access to genuine, holistic care, Clara embarked on her true journey of healing. The scars of her past were deep, but her spirit, nurtured by Elijah's unwavering belief and her mother's rekindled memory, proved astonishingly resilient. Together, Elijah and Clara, their bond now that of a devoted brother and protective sister, established the Adamariana Foundation. Its purpose was clear and noble, to offer holistic healing and support to individuals, especially children, suffering from trauma-induced illnesses and conditions dismissed by conventional medicine, and to champion artists from marginalized cultures, celebrating the vibrant legacy of Adama Okoro. The Blackwood estate, once a cold monument to avarice and cruelty, was reborn. Its sterile, opulent rooms were transformed into warm, inviting sanctuaries filled with vibrant art, healing music, and the laughter of recovering children. The grand ballroom, scene of Blackwood's ignominious downfall, blossomed into a therapeutic conservatory, a haven of peace and renewal. Elijah, no longer the starving orphan but the esteemed director of a globally recognized foundation, stood not in smug triumph over a vanquished enemy, but in quiet, profound dedication to cultivating beauty from the ashes of profound injustice. His ultimate victory lay not in revenge, but in profound restoration of Clara's vitality, her mother's honor, and the inherent dignity of all those who had been silenced, abused, or tragically underestimated. He had demonstrated to a watching world that true, enduring power is found not in hoarded wealth or tyrannical status, but in unwavering compassion, immutable truth, and the courageous empathy that can, indeed, awaken a spirit from the brink of oblivion. If this chronicle of resilience, justice, and the dramatic unmasking of corrosive arrogance has resonated deep within your spirit, we invite you to share its powerful message. The story of Elijah, Clara, and the fall of Alistair Blackwood is a visceral, emotional testament to the often overlooked truth that prejudice is a veil, blinding us to the extraordinary worth concealed within the most unassuming individuals. It speaks volumes about the quiet dignity of those who endure unimaginable hardship, those who observe with patient wisdom, those who carry the ancient light of generations within them, unseen by eyes clouded with contempt and self-importance. Alistair Blackwood's catastrophic demise was not merely a random turn of misfortune, it was the inevitable karmic reaping of his venomous underestimation, his deeply ingrained belief that his immense power and obscene wealth conferred upon him an exemption from the most basic tenets of human decency and moral accountability. He saw a young man with a broom and utterly failed to perceive the indomitable heart of a warrior armed with truth. He saw a comatose young woman and tragically forgot the unquenchable strength of a spirit forged in the crucible of profound sorrow and betrayal. True, lasting power is never discovered in the gilded boardrooms of the powerful or the fortified vaults of the obscenely rich. It resides, timeless and unshakable, in the unwavering integrity of the human soul, in the profound courage required to speak truth directly to the face of entrenched power, and in the empathetic, life-affirming connections that possess the miraculous ability to awaken even the most deeply wounded spirit. Let this be a reminder: never judge the worth of a soul by its outward appearance, for the most humble vessel may contain a story of unparalleled depth, resilience, and transformative spiritual power. And remember this always: the universe possesses an uncanny, often ironic, mechanism for ensuring that the measure of cruelty and disdain one dispenses upon others becomes the very yardstick by which their own world is ultimately, and often publicly, brought to ruin. The bitter seeds of one's own destruction are invariably sown by one's own hand, meticulously watered by insufferable arrogance, and inevitably harvested in the harsh, unforgiving glare of public scrutiny. The silent ones, the forgotten ones, the underestimated ones, they frequently hold the keys to a truth far more potent and enduring than any fleeting empire constructed upon a foundation of lies and exploitation.